was a time when Northern Ireland was considered to be a backwater of British life and nothing much happened there. British television hardly ever reported what went on.
Stand fast in the faith, ye soldiers all just cross. Stand fast, nor flinch.
In the late 1960s, the long period of calm in Northern Ireland was followed by the Troubles. In this programme in Film Century, we'll look at the film evidence of what went on in the autumn of 1968 and at the beginning of 1969, when two civil rights protest marches took place. They helped to bring Northern Ireland into the news headlines. The evidence of what went on, as revealed or constructed by different television reports at the time, provides some examples of why opinion is so divided on the subject of Northern Ireland today.
2 weeks ago, ladies and gentlemen, October the 5th, a day that will be remembered in this city for some years, we held a peaceful march.
This extract is from one of the several television documentaries being made in the autumn of 1968, which helped to bring politics into the reporting of Northern Ireland.
Ivan Cooper has good reason to plead for non-violence. Londonderry, just over 2 weeks ago, October the 5th. A civil rights march broken up by the police on the orders of William Craig, Minister for Home Affairs. He accused the civil rights movement of being a revolutionary plot to destroy the independence of the Protestant North. There's no doubt that the movement does contain some revolutionaries. One of those named by William Craig in Stormont, the Northern Irish Parliament, was Eamon McCann.
First, to my mind, as it is usually posed, is a completely false issue. You see, when people like William Craig say that violence must be taken out of politics, they always mean take your violence out of politics, let mine stay. When sanctimonious politicians from both sides talk about taking the gun out of Irish politics down through the years, they have always meant take your gun out of politics.
That account of the Civil Rights March in Londonderry was made 2 weeks after the event by the World in Action television team based in Manchester. They used words from an interview recorded for their programme over pictures of the march filmed by Independent Television News 2 weeks earlier.
Politics. They always mean take your violence out of politics, let mine stay.
There had been a number of civil rights protests in Northern Ireland before this big march was arranged in Londonderry for the 5th of October 1968. Lots of film was shot as the march erupted in confrontation. The photographic point of view depended upon where the cameraman chose to place the camera. Only some of the pictures recorded on film were used in the different items that were broadcast. This news film was taken by people working for RTE, Radio Telefís Éireann, a public service broadcaster in Ireland, based over the border in Dublin. The Royal Ulster Constabulary, or RUC, County Inspector, is shown telling the civil rights protesters that they cannot march further into the city.
Any person who wishes to parade or hold a meeting is quite at liberty to do so, provided he holds it other than in an area specified in the order made by the Minister.
The civil rights protests mainly came from Catholics in Northern Ireland, who claimed that jobs and housing were being denied them in favour of Protestants. There was still discrimination in voting. The principle of one man, one vote didn't operate in local elections. The police were determined to prevent the demonstrators from marching further into the city. They drew up in a line to stop them going forward. Some of these pictures were chosen by the World in Action producers, while others were not. These pictures seem to be the same, but they're taken from a different angle. We don't know how much of the RTE film was used in their news bulletins that night. But we do know the pictures were shown all over the world. They became the main evidence of what happened on that day. In Northern Ireland, the local ITV station is called Ulster Television, UTV. There are several differences between UTV's coverage of the march and RTE's. The UTV news item starts with civil rights organiser Ivan Cooper stressing that the crowd should behave in a responsible manner. It's not easy to hear his words because of feedback on the megaphone.
Freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. We do not wish bloodshed or violence.
It appears that only these brief shots were shown that night on local Ulster television, in contrast to what was shown south of the border. And this is the news story from ITN, shown across the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We don't know the actual words the ITN reporter used over these pictures because the scripts have not been kept for the record. We can recognise that the ITN cameraman was filming close to UTV's. Both were stationed in flats above Duke Street, where the marchers were turned away from the city walls and clashed with the police and their water cannon. The worldwide attention given to the pictures of the Londonderry March changed the course of history. As the British Home Secretary James Callaghan wrote, Ulster had arrived in the headlines. There were more marches and counter-marches over the next 3 months, each attracting more and more press and television coverage. There was a truce over Christmas in 1968, followed by a 4-day march from Belfast to Londonderry. The marchers set off from Belfast on the 1st of January 1969. As they crossed Northern Ireland, the march grew in size and was frequently rerouted. Again, the perspectives of different news teams brought to the screen different accounts of what happened.
Well, I think it's been very successful so far. We've had a very good turnout. Now, we've had some difficulties along the route, and there are certain towns we've been prevented from going through. We don't like that, but we feel that that demonstrates the fact that in Northern Ireland we have a situation like the southern states of America, where you do not have the basic democratic liberty of free procession.
Michael Farrell was referring to the counter-demonstrations on the previous day, which had caused the police to reroute the 4-day march around the town of Antrim. Local youths had chanted racial taunts. Loyalist supporters, led by Major Ronald Bunting, had demonstrated against the march, and Bunting himself had helped arrange the police escort around the town. At this moment, the UTV cameraman stopped filming. Later, the 4-day march carried on along the agreed route, after the police escort around Antrim. Food supplies were brought in, and the first night was spent in a community hall outside Randalstown. Over the next 2 days, the march continued to gather opposition from hostile areas and support from friendly areas. The marchers crossed the lonely mountains of Sperrin, walking northwest towards Londonderry. And on the 4th day, a Saturday, they approached the city.
There is a good possibility of some stones being thrown, some people may be hurt somewhat. However, police have said they are quite prepared to get us through this obstacle. And if we all keep in very close formation on the right-hand side of the road, the people throwing the stones will be on high ground on the right-hand side. If we keep in close formation on the right-hand side under the hedge, keeping well into the right-hand half of the road, then we should be okay.
These RTE news pictures were used again in an RTE current affairs programme shown in Ireland the following Tuesday.
But it was on Saturday that the cauldron exploded. 4 times the students were ambushed on that last 10 miles to Derry. At that first ambush, a terrible battle at Burntollet Bridge, some of the marchers concluded that the police had led them in intentionally and then showed little interest in protecting them. The extremists attacked from both sides and from the front. They came from the high ground at the sides of the road and from hiding below the bridge. Certainly, police reconnaissance appeared to underestimate the strength of the opposition. One marcher claimed to have overheard an officer tell a loyalist, "Get them at the crossroads." Armed Protestants chased the rights walkers as they fled across the fields. They smashed the heads of men and girls alike.
The Ulster Television news pictures recorded this from a different camera angle. Motorcycle helmets were worn by some of the attackers for protection. A Dutch television team followed the march from beginning to end. Their cameras got right amongst the marchers, and the programme makers put the story of the march into a religious context. The Dutch report begins in the Protestant Free Presbyterian Church of the Reverend Ian Paisley.
I saw my sin away.
Een mars van ongeveer 150 studenten heeft in Noord-Ierland aanleiding gegeven tot grote ordeverstoring. De jongelui liepen vaak door hagen van zeer vijandige en handtastelijke extremisten. De jongelui liepen opgeruimd recht in de armen van ruim 200 extremisten die hen ter weerszijde van een holle weg aanvielen. 87 werden gewond, waarvan 40 zeer ernstig. Er viel niets te zingen, zeker niet het strijdlied van de extremisten, The Protestant Boys.
The Protestant boys are loyal and true, stout-hearted in battle and stout-hearted too. The Protestant boys are true as of yore, and faithful and peaceful and dangerous so. And though they bear and proudly wear the colours that floated on many a play, with cannons are flashing and sabres are clashing, the Protestant boys can carry the day.
We were marching along the road, and there was about half a dozen or a dozen policemen in the field holding the crowd back, and they made no attempt at all. The crowd came on forward and they started throwing bricks. And I was standing along the hedge and a brick hit me.
You seem to have been in a march. What happened to you?
I got hit with a stick or a bar or something. I don't know what it was. Twice.
Does it hurt?
It hurts. I'm telling you, it hurts.
Why were you marching?
Why was I marching? For civil rights.
You think there are civil rights now in Ulster?
They probably won't, but they'll keep on marching till they get them.
These are the civil rights people. This is what they believe in. They say they believe in civil rights. They don't believe in civil rights at all. They're just a bunch of Republican rebels. That's what they are. Let's be very clear about it. They have no time for law and order. They have no time for this country. And they mean to destroy this country. And we mean to see that this country will not be destroyed. That's just where we stand. Let it be very clear.
We're talking about peace, peace when there is no peace. Now, we can never have peace with the Church of Rome until Rome makes peace with God.
Do you think, sir, that anything is going to be solved by violence like we witnessed in the streets of Londonderry yesterday?
Well,
militant action.
Nobody believes in violence. But I think the reformers were militant. If it hadn't been for the reformers, we wouldn't have been here today. We'd have been under the heel of Rome.
We've got so-called civil writers here in Northern Ireland, and I am myself a student, and I know just what these students are up to at the colleges. They are Romanists who want to take over this province. We've also got men in this province in the churches who are preaching for their pensions, in my estimation. They are not true preachers of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ at all. And we have got a man, thank God, in this country, Mr. Reverend Ian Paisley, who stands for the gospel, and I stand fully behind him and what he preaches.
Those interviews had been recorded on Sunday the 5th of January for later screening on television in Holland. Now British television news showed Catholics and Protestants in open conflict. BBC News was starting to film in colour. This is their reporter Martin Bell describing the aftermath of that four-day march from Belfast to Londonderry and suggesting that Northern Ireland was set to stay in the headlines.
They equipped themselves with an arsenal of crude, unfriendly instruments, clubs, cudgels, crowbars, and much else besides. They held a meeting at which the defence of the area was meticulously planned, and civil rights leaders insisted that they were defending, not attacking. The men were instructed to stand guard at specific street corners and on the main approach roads. And here the barriers went up. Again, these were improvised but effective, made with whatever came to hand. What changed the situation completely, caused the Catholics to take to the streets, was something else again. The allegation that early on Sunday morning, a detachment of police moved into 2 streets in the district, deliberately smashing every window which they passed. An official inquiry is now being made to try and establish the facts. And so, back to the burning barricades. And if the barricades are a sign of the times, then the signs of the times are not at all encouraging. Particularly after Captain O'Neill's statement. There's a feeling here, on both sides, I think, that the period of conciliation is over. That something more direct, more protracted, more painful, maybe, lies ahead.
We take television for granted today. It's become our main source of information about the world around us. Events have become important simply because they're shown on television. And television will be the main visual source for future historians about the closing years of the 20th century.